Monarch was there, in San Francisco.
It's kind of happening organically, so it's like we can just hang back and look like we're not interested, but it's gonna happen.
Can I take a piece of hair that's on Ren's face? Sorry. Thank you.
Oh. I was just in the stinkiest mood. Like, she's an anomaly.
The world is on fire. If you want to save millions of lives, we can use some help.
The fun flip about it was like, yep, Kurt comes along, then Wyatt comes along. But in this, Wyatt is the beginning.
I think we both did that very, very subtly, as to not be too, beat you over the head with some like, we're both gonna walk with a crazy limp and we only walk backwards.
If I was wearing a beard in this.
Yeah.
This is a massive moment for me. Big fan of both of you. You are a credit to humanity for both of your hair, both facial and the top of your head. And I could go down a list of geeking out on both of your past films and things like that. This is such a cool project because the fact that you get to actually play the same character and there's all these similarities. Kurt, I'm gonna ask, did you adapt yourself to fit how Wyatt was playing the role, or was this a collaboration between the two of you to figure it out?
Well, it was certainly a collaboration, that's for sure. The character, we were just a casting idea, so when they cast us, it's like, okay, you've cast us, now let's figure this guy out. So for me, it was much more me adjusting, I think, in any way to him than he was having to adjust to me, because he's laying the character down. The fun flip about it was like, yep, Kurt comes along, then Wyatt comes along. But in this, Wyatt is the beginning. And then you meet the oh man, and then you start going back and forth. And finally there's that one blend and you kind of go, oh, he's the same guy. It's the same guy.
And it's very cool how it comes off. Wyatt, for you, was there anything, did you go back and look at any of your dad's prior work to try and get down any mannerisms, or did you just say he's gonna have to pick up what I'm putting down?
No, actually, I drugged him and put toothpicks in his eyes and made him watch Lodge 49 on a loop for a week.
Great move.
We when we were offered the part, it was very clear that we were going to have to work on creating a character that was going to be fun to play for both of us. And there are things that we do differently. Like my dad has said before in these interviews, like we do have rhythms that are a bit different. And so, adjusting your rhythm sometimes to be more like the other. I think we both did that very, very subtly, as to not be too, beat you over the head with some like, we're both gonna walk with a crazy limp and we only walk backwards.
If I was wearing a beard in this.
Yeah.
We would, wait a minute, which one is it?
You think that your father was working for them?
This stuff wasn't as safe.
Who are they? What's Monarch?
I really love the interplay between all three of you in the sequences, both like the one-on-one and then as a group. And Anna, for you, coming into this as Kate, and you've got the really intense flashback sequences that are in San Francisco, and then you're just kind of pulled into all of the stuff that's going on. Where did you center this character? Was it on what was coming from her past, or was it more centered on the present?
I think definitely in the beginning it's centered on G-Day and everything that she's lost, but in the present, because she has no idea about her family history at that point. But as the season goes, we start to see that she's learning about her past and what her grandmother and her father kind of left. And she's having to deal with it. And I don't think she realizes, but everything that is on her right now is dependent on, is echoed by the choices that her grandmother made. And so I think slowly it starts to become dependent on the past.
Now, you can choke down that Monarch lie about your father disappearing.
There was much more. With makeup and Dennis Lydiard, our makeup artist, he would put a dimple on me where I didn't have a dimple, and there was stuff to do to make me look more like my dad. That was.
But it is true. We were basically stripped down to the bare thing, because
Yes.
You were wearing your hair short. You had no beard.
There was nothing
I was
hiding
gonna have to. It's like he's older, but he still looks kind of the same. But yeah, I can see that.
There was no crutch.
Yeah, there was no crutch. You couldn't. Yeah, it was like
play this character.
Yeah.
Like,
We had one thing, a scar, which in terms of reveal was kind of.
Don't blink or you'll miss.
Yeah, don't blink. Or you'll miss. Yeah, it's like,
Yeah, and Joe, for you, this character could have very easily been written off as, comic relief or just, the guy that comes in just to balance out the dramatic stuff that's going on. But this is also such an interesting character, and it's almost like, in a way, the successor to Bill Randa carrying the torch for what Monarch is supposed to be. How did you kind of figure out how to play this role?
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's just like a lot of clues early about like soup stains on his tie and that he's down in the basement by himself, and it just a lot of the information about him is in those early scripts, and it's just simply like somebody doesn't have great interpersonal skills, and there's a ticking clock, and like he seems like throughout I can't say too much, but like that he ends up being, as you can see, like right about things as like Monarch is ignoring him and stuff like that. And so like, I don't know, I just think there's something inherently comic about somebody that has been alone for that long, that is now having to spend time around a lot of people that, I don't know. It doesn't, I think the story sort of lends itself to some of that comedy, but like, I appreciate that people don't think it's just a one dimension, like he's just got one pitch, you know what I mean?
There's so many revivals of things that happen these days. If there was an opportunity to go back selfishly, I would love to see you two team up in a Tango and Cash sequel or a third Escape movie. But if you could pick one of your dad's movies to go and do a sequel to and be in with him, what would it be?
Okay, so the question is team up, do a sequel, not be one of his characters, because that answer is always like never.
You could be the son. It's something like that.
Used Cars is my favorite movie. It's my favorite world to live in. It's a very small world with very high stakes to the people that are living very small lives, who all have very big dreams. Those are always my favorite worlds, and I would love to live in some kind of world like that. But yeah, so I guess that I use Cars.
You can't have fun playing that game because if, for instance, let's say when you talk about Tango and Cash, if Sly had a son that looked a lot like him and was whatever the similarities were, you'd have to at least look at it and say, is it funny? Is it fun?
Right,
but you can't. You know what's fun about that is it just tells you that people have enjoyed it. It worked.
Yeah, right.
And you probably better just
leave it alone.
Leave it alone.
And Keirsey, for you, this is the third role this year that I've loved you in. That all of the, somebody I used to know, to The Flash, to this, like in all of these performances, what I really love is that the character is real. It's somebody that you could believably see. It's not a caricature, it's not two-dimensional. And in this, you've got that realism coupled with crazy action and messing with monsters and the ice and all of that. Where is the more of the challenging aspect? Is it acting against things that aren't there, or is it the more intimate moments between like the three of you having to have conversations that are very heavy?
I think that it's a challenge the more that I play someone that's really similar or more similar to myself. I actually feel like I'm now trying to move away from doing anything like that because, I don't know, I guess I like I was saying before, I was saying that I like to learn new things about myself through playing these characters that are much more different than me, even though there's something I relate to in all of them. But yeah, and thank you.
This world, it's not ours. Believe me.
It is so much more vast than we could possibly imagine.
So this show is so cool, and it's so different than what I was expecting it to be, because you've got the King Kong movies, the Godzilla movies, and they are big spectaculars with all this kind of monster-centric, but this is so much more of a character-centric series, and all three of you, all your scenes together are so fantastic. I wanted to start with Ken, with you, with Ren. What was it like playing this character and having to do the switches between language, between flashback, flash forward, like keeping it all straight? How did you figure out how to do that in a convincing way?
Yeah, there's an analogy between myself and the character. We're both Japanese. I was raised by a single mother. I speak both languages fluently. But really, I was able to relate a lot, which is a good thing, but also a bad thing because you start to see yourself while playing the character, and I hate seeing myself. So I was struggling with that, but all in all, I feel lucky to have played someone like him that I can authentically play.
Have either of you decided to pitch a spin-off focused on just your two characters? Has that been something that you've thought about at all?
Can I just say that we haven't had to bring it up? It's just everybody else keeps bringing it up. That it's kind of happening organically, so it's like we can just hang back and look like we're not interested, but it's gonna happen.
That's awesome. It would be fantastic. And Elisa, I gotta ask you first off, this character, when we first see her, I'm thinking this is just going to be like a background thug. It's going to be somebody that we just see as an enforcer for a little bit, but then there's more and more development that happens over each episode. Were you kind of interested in seeing how far this character was going to grow over the course of the season?
I don't know what I can say or when you're going to be putting this out.
This will be out after the 5th episode.
Okay. After the 5th episode. Yeah. So, we do get to explore more of her and somehow her motives behind being brought into this world and sort of like following the course that she does. We had an idea, the creatives told us a little bit where things were going, but there's also always an element of surprise. And all I could say is that I was just happy that we get to know her better and that she isn't indeed just like this, kind of Terminator-like figure.
These monsters and Monarch have taken everything from me. No more.
And there's two scenes in particular that I wanted to ask you about that struck me in the early episodes. And the first one is the scene on the beach where you're trying everything you can to stop what's going to happen. It's such an emotionally challenging scene. What was it like kind of going through that? Like, how do you channel that emotion about a monster that's off in the distance, like all of these feelings? Like, where did that come from?
I think when I read it, I felt such an enormous responsibility and also gratitude for the writers for creating such a dramatic and also elegant scene, because I don't think it spells out, what's happening. It's just, it's just so subtle, and I was overwhelmed by this sort of responsibility that I wanted to capture. You hear about how when Godzilla was first aired, or not aired, shown in the cinemas, audiences you could hear people crying because it put a face to all of their traumas and fears that they had experienced, and it was somehow cathartic for them. And I think Keiko's origin story for me is rooted in her experience of the war and how the war ended, and we don't explicitly talk about it, but that's what propels her to study radiation and the effects of it, and to work in a realm where she can somehow try to make sure that it doesn't happen again, right? So she's carrying these things, and yet she's so hopeful that, I think people who have survived such things, such devastation, you look at it and say, well, I'm gonna make something of myself,
And I'll ask all of you, Ren, we can start with you, and then we can go on and Keirsey. What was the most challenging scene? And this is gonna air right around episode 5. What would you say was the most challenging scene for you in the series? Was it something action, or was it something a little smaller?
Probably, I had to walk through like fake snow in a blizzard kind of situation. that was physically demanding. Yeah.
Did you say you watched episode 5?
Yes.
Okay, so I think it is in episode 5 where we see Kate kind of like holding hands with May, and May is kind of calming her down. That day was tough. Like, I really felt like Keirsey. I mean, I should be feeling like the character, but I felt Keirsey's energy being like, Anna, it's okay, breathe. And I'm just remembering that right now. It was a tough day.
That was a hard day for all of us.
Yeah.
Day I cried. Don't know why. Mine was going to be, that was the same episode, I think, when I was really sick and we were doing the subway stuff, and I was just in the stinkiest mood. Stinky mood. I just like put myself in a corner. I was just very sick, and it was cold and raining, and I wanted to quit.
We have those days when it's a really long shoot.
It's just how you feel when you're sick and working at all, no matter who you are.
Yeah.
The concept of this show is called Monarch, so it's not Godzilla, it's not King Kong, but it still exists within that universe. When you first started out, was Monarch presented to you as an evil organization, as a good organization, or was it kind of ambiguous?
Well, so we sort of keep talking about this, that like, I don't personally think there are good and evil per se, that the world changed. There's monsters in the world, and everybody's going to have a different idea of what to do about that. And I think what I think will be really cool is for as the show progresses, people's ideas about what to do about that are going to start to crystallize a little bit, and they'll be oppositional. And it'll be kind of cool to see people be like, I think I'm team this, or I think I'm team that. Because what is a testament to Chris and Matt Fraction have done, and the rest of the writers, is everybody's making a compelling case. And so all that was told to me about Monarch was that it just simply had become, it was this shoestring thing with these 3 characters that has now become this massive bloated bureaucracy. And as a result of that, like, they have lost the thread a little bit. It's not that they're evil or anything of that nature, but just simply like they've lost their eyes off the ball a little bit.
There's the moment I think that I realized that I was going to like Duvall as a character was when you referred to Tim as your partner. And it's very clear that this character, Duvall, is much more physically imposing and has more of an ability than Tim does, who gets stuff thrown in his face and has to deal with it. But for that moment, did you kind of feel that was the moment where your character is more than just watching him, but you actually are partners?
Yeah, I mean, I think, that was the idea, obviously, that they're colleagues, that we can imagine they've probably worked together before, that they have a long history like that, and that they're very complementary. And I was glad that they're setting it up like that, we're, sort of wanting to work together, that Duvall and Tim want to work together, that they value each other, that their skill sets are complementary, and that, in the face of Verdugo, in the scene that you're referring to from episode 3, although she's the authority and this is the people that surely, that he is above them in Monarch in the hierarchy, that they're like, well, no, like, we're standing up for something that we believe in. We're working in this organization, which, is studying monsters. But to bring back, like, to your previous point, Joe, of like, it's not so much about being good or bad, or it's just different people within it trying to kind of work out how to survive in that world. And I think what makes Duvall and Tim interesting is that they have their own ideas of, navigating that. And they're a little bit, I don't know, if Monarch is representative of the establishment, maybe Tim and Duvall are a bit anti-establishment in some ways,
There's so much emotional weight to a lot of this story, but then at the same time, we're dealing with monsters and a lot of special effects. And the scene where you had to be hanging off with all the eggs and the creatures below, I was just wondering, I'm sure a lot of this is fun, a lot of it's exhausting. What is more challenging, those scenes like on the beach where it's all emotional in the car, or these special effects things where you're rigged up and having to do things like that?
I think the emotional parts you know, you can prepare for, you know, so much, you know, in advance. So once I'm in it, so I don't find it that difficult. But the technical elements of shooting a scene like the one where you're on a wire and you're being dropped, you know, over and over 40 feet, and and then, you know, it's all very choreographed, right? So somebody is pulling a string on your leg saying, okay, one got you, so then you have to react to that, and then like you're trying to shoot it and all these things. So timing and I think those technical parts are perhaps more difficult, and on top of that I have a fear of heights and speed, so having to do that over and over was interesting, to say the least.
The world is on fire. If you want to save millions of lives, we can use some help.